So it has been confirmed that Omotosho received 50 billion naira. Omotosho and 5 other sons.
I greet all my fans. Let's watch this video together without wasting much time. If it is your first time seeing my post, kindly follow Odogwu Empire TV page for more updates, share, comment, and like. Let's go there. I'll be right back.
They received this 50 billion naira to convict Mazi Nnamdi. As you watch the video, you get to know the 5 sons that work with Omotosho and how they divided the money. So the people that review this information right now, as I'm actually talking to you, is the ICPC. In case you have not heard about the ICPC, is the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offense Commission, the ICPC. So in case you don't know their role in this country, in fact, the ICPC is a Nigerian government agency established in 2000 to fight corruption through investigation, persecution, and prevention. It focuses on enforcing anti-corruption law, reviewing public system, and educating the public to ensure transparency and accountability. Now, first of all, the reason why I have to read out the people that gave out this information and the evidence, just take your time listening to this particular video. This is the best information I've seen since 2026. Since January till now. Just take your time. See how they received the money. Look at how the money was actually paid to them, because say the money was a very big money. So the system, they managed to pay the money to them so that these people, the DSS and these people, why is even the EFCC, so that they will not hold them accountable. How come that kind of amount of money come to the account? Just take your time and watch the video, guys, and see what's actually going on. Do not forget to share for that people to be aware about what is actually happening here, guys.
The Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, ICPC, dropped a devastating revelation that shook the foundations of Nigeria's justice system. Their investigation uncovered concrete evidence that the federal government had paid exactly 50 billion naira in bribes to ensure Nnamdi Kanu received a life imprisonment sentence. The money was not scattered randomly. It was deliberately channeled to 5 senior advocates of Nigeria, SANs, who played central roles in the prosecution, along with the presiding judge, Justice James Omotosho. The ICPC team, working with forensic accountants and digital forensics experts, followed the money trail through a web of shell companies, private accounts, and coded wire transfers. Bank statements, transaction logs, and internal government memos painted a clear picture. This was not payment for ordinary legal services. It was a straightforward bribe package designed for one outcome only: the unlawful conviction and lifelong jailing of Nnamdi Kanu. The 5 senior advocates of Nigeria received the lion's share of the 50 billion naira. Each SAN was allocated portions ranging from 7 billion to 12 billion naira, depending on their level of involvement. The first SAN, a prominent silk known for high-profile government cases, collected 12 billion naira. He coordinated the overall prosecution strategy and ensured that weak links in the evidence were patched with manufactured documents. The second SAN, who handled witness preparation, pocketed 10 billion naira for scripting testimonies that aligned perfectly with the desired narrative. The third and fourth SANs, responsible for cross-examination and closing arguments, each received 9 billion naira to aggressively shut down any defense that could expose the flaws in the case. The fifth SAN, acting as a behind-the-scenes fixer, took 7 billion naira for liaising with court officials and suppressing inconvenient evidence. Every kobo was tracked. ICPC investigators recovered transfer receipts showing the funds moved from a special government allocation account through intermediary firms registered in Abuja and Lagos. Some payments were disguised as consultancy fees for national security matters, while others appeared as enhanced legal retainers. In reality, the money bought silence, cooperation, and guaranteed performance. The SANs did not just represent the government, they were paid to deliver a conviction at all costs. Justice James Omotosho was not left out. A significant slice of the bribe, confirmed at over 3 billion naira, went directly to accounts linked to him and his close associates. The judge received his payment in staged installments, an initial deposit after the trial commenced, a larger tranche midway through proceedings, and the final payment just before the judgment date. Internal notes recovered by ICPC showed explicit instructions: deliver the full package, life sentence on the major counts. Omotosho was paid to control the courtroom, dismiss valid defense objections, and ignore procedural violations that would have collapsed the case under normal circumstances. The timing of the exposure made it even more damning. The ICPC raid on several law chambers and private residences in Abuja yielded laptops, hard drives, and ledgers that matched the financial records. One recovered document listed the 5 SANs by code names alongside their exact bribe amounts and deliverables. Another file detailed how Justice Omotosho would structure his rulings to favor the prosecution at every turn. There was no ambiguity. The 50 billion naira was the price tag for turning the Federal High Court into a venue for a prepaid conviction. This was not a case of routine influence peddling. It was a systematic purchase of justice. The 5 senior advocates of Nigeria and Justice Omotosho had been contracted to jail Nnamdi Kanu unlawfully. Evidence that should have been thrown out was admitted. Witnesses who should have been discredited were protected. Motions that deserved granting were denied without proper reasoning. The entire trial process was bent to fit the outcome that 50 billion naira had purchased. The ICPC report laid it out plainly: the federal government did not trust the strength of its own case. Instead of allowing the law to run its course, it paid top legal minds and the judge to engineer a life sentence. Nnamdi Kanu was not convicted because the evidence proved terrorism beyond reasonable doubt. He was sentenced because 5 SANs and 1 judge had accepted billions to make sure he never walked free. The exposure left no room for doubt. Documents, bank trails, and witness statements from insiders confirmed the transaction. The 50 billion naira had one clear purpose: to buy the unlawful jailing of Nnamdi Kanu through the highest levels of the legal profession. The ICPC had the receipts, the transfers, and the agreement. The 50 billion naira bribe was not a vague rumor. It was a meticulously executed transaction designed to buy the unlawful conviction of Nnamdi Kanu. ICPC investigators pieced together the full payment structure from recovered bank records, signed acknowledgements, and internal memos. The 5 senior advocates of Nigeria received the bulk of the funds because they were the ones who could deliver the courtroom result the government wanted. Justice James Omotosho received his cut to guarantee the rulings that made the conviction inevitable. The money moved in clear, traceable stages. The first San, the lead prosecutor known for handling sensitive government matters, received 12 billion naira. His role was simple and direct: coordinate the entire prosecution team and ensure every piece of evidence, no matter how weak, was presented as ironclad. He personally oversaw the insertion of documents that had no proper chain of custody. He directed the team to ignore contradictions in the terrorism charges. For 12 billion naira, he sold the integrity of his office and turned the prosecution into a paid performance. The second San, responsible for witness handling, collected 10 billion naira. He scripted and rehearsed testimonies from prosecution witnesses to align perfectly with the narrative of terrorism. Witnesses who had earlier given conflicting statements were coached to change their stories. Exculpatory details were buried. This San ensured that cross-examination from the defense never exposed the lies. The 10 billion naira bought manufactured evidence and protected false witnesses from being discredited. The third San, who led aggressive cross-examinations and objection battles, took 9 billion naira. His job was to attack every valid defense motion and shut down any attempt to introduce evidence that could prove Nnamdi Kanu's detention or rendition violated due process. He argued forcefully against bail applications, against challenges to the court's jurisdiction, and against motions seeking to exclude illegally obtained evidence. For 9 billion naira, he made sure the defense was strangled at every turn. The fourth San, in charge of closing arguments and final submissions, also received 9 billion naira. He crafted the summation that painted Nnamdi Kanu as a clear and present danger, urging the court to deliver the maximum sentence. He emphasized unproven links between Kanu's broadcasts and actual violence while ignoring the lack of direct evidence tying him to specific terrorist acts. His 9 billion naira ensured the prosecution's narrative ended strong and unchallenged. The fifth San acted as the fixer and coordinator. He received 7 billion naira for managing communications between the legal team, government officials, and the judges' chambers. He arranged private meetings in secure locations outside the courtroom. He facilitated the flow of instructions and confirmed that each milestone in the bribery agreement was met. This San made sure the entire operation ran smoothly without leaks. Justice James Omotosho was paid over 3 billion naira in staged installments. The first tranche came shortly after the trial resumed under his watch. A larger amount was transferred midway through the proceedings once key defense motions had been dismissed. The final payment landed just days before the judgment date. ICPC recovered transfer details showing the funds moved through accounts linked to his associates, disguised as security consultancy or family support. The explicit instruction attached to his payment was clear: deliver a life sentence on the major terrorism counts. Omotosho fulfilled his part by ruling against the defense on every critical point. He admitted questionable evidence, overruled valid objections, ignored procedural breaches, and dismissed arguments about unlawful rendition and fair hearing violations. These secret payments turned the Federal High Court in Abuja into a transaction center. The 5 Sans and the judge did not apply the law. They executed a paid script. Defense evidence that could have dismantled the charges was suppressed. Witnesses who should have crumbled under scrutiny were shielded. Rulings that should have favored due process were consistently tilted toward the prosecution. The entire trial became a foregone conclusion the moment the first bribe installment cleared. The plot was unlawful from the root. Nigeria's Constitution and the Evidence Act demand that convictions rest on proof beyond reasonable doubt, not on purchased outcomes. Yet 50 billion naira bought exactly that: a conviction without genuine legal foundation. The Sans knew the case had weaknesses, gaps in evidence, questions over jurisdiction, issues with how Kanu was brought back into the country. They were paid to ignore those weaknesses and manufacture strength where none existed. Justice Omotosho knew the same. He was paid to overlook them and deliver the life sentence the government demanded. The ICPC evidence left no room for misinterpretation. Ledgers listed the 5 Sans with their exact amounts and assigned tasks. Bank trails matched the dates of critical court rulings. Insider notes confirmed the deliverables: full conviction, life imprisonment, no successful defense motions. This was not ordinary legal work. It was a direct purchase of a judicial outcome. The 5 senior advocates of Nigeria and Justice James Omotosho sold the independence of the court for 50 billion naira. They conspired to jail Nnamdi Kanu unlawfully, turning a terrorism trial into a billion naira business deal. The payments ensured that justice was not served, it was bought and delivered as ordered. The secret plot succeeded in the courtroom, but the ICPC investigation later exposed every kobo, every transfer, and every instruction. The 50 billion naira had one purpose only: to guarantee that Nnamdi Kanu would spend the rest of his life behind bars, not because the law required it, but because 5 Sans and 1 judge had accepted billions to make it happen. On November 20th, 2025, Justice James Omotosho delivered the final blow in the Federal High Court, Abuja. He convicted Nnamdi Kanu on all 7 terrorism-related charges and sentenced him to life imprisonment. The judgment was read in open court, but the real force behind it remained hidden until the ICPC exposed the 50 billion naira bribe paid to 5 senior advocates of Nigeria and the judge himself. Omotosho declared that prosecutors had proved Kanu's broadcasts and directives to the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, incited deadly attacks on security forces and civilians. He rejected the prosecution's demand for the death penalty, stating he would temper justice with mercy. Instead, he imposed 4 life sentences on the major counts, plus additional terms of 20 years and 5 years on the remaining counts. All sentences were to run concurrently, effective from the judgment date. Nnamdi Kanu was ordered to spend the rest of his life in prison. This outcome was not the result of strong, unassailable evidence. It was the direct product of the 50 billion naira unlawful payment. The 5 senior advocates of Nigeria had done their paid work. They suppressed defense evidence, coached witnesses, manufactured supporting documents, and blocked every procedural safeguard. Justice Omotosho, having received his own share of over 3 billion naira, ruled exactly as instructed. He admitted tainted evidence, overruled valid objections on jurisdiction and fair hearing, ignored the circumstances of Kanu's rendition, and dismissed motions that should have collapsed the case. The courtroom that day witnessed a scripted conclusion. Defense arguments about violations of due process were brushed aside. Questions over the strength of the terrorism links were never properly tested. The entire trial had been compromised from the moment the first bribe installment was transferred. The 5 Sands had sold their advocacy for billions. The judge had sold his independence for billions. Together, they delivered a life sentence that the law, applied cleanly, could not have supported. ICPC investigators later confirmed every detail. Bank records showed the final payments cleared just days before the judgment. Recovered memos carried explicit instructions, secure the full conviction and life imprisonment. The 5 Sands fulfilled their contracts by ensuring no defense succeeded. Omotosho fulfilled his by pronouncing the predetermined sentence without hesitation. The 50 billion naira had purchased exactly what it was meant to buy, the permanent removal of Nnamdi Kanu through the courts. This was not justice delivered. It was justice sold. The conviction rested on evidence weakened by bribery, procedures violated for money, and rulings dictated by cash transfers. Kanu was found guilty and sentenced to life not because the charges were proven beyond reasonable doubt in an independent court, but because 5 senior advocates of Nigeria and Justice James Omotosho had accepted huge bribes to make the outcome certain. The life sentence was pronounced with finality. Kanu stood in the dock as the words were read. Security was heavy. The judgment was immediate and uncompromising. Yet behind the formal language of the court lay the cold truth uncovered by the ICPC. The entire process was unlawful. The 50 billion naira bribe had turned the Federal High Court into a marketplace where man's freedom was traded for cash. The 5 Sands walked away richer, their roles in the plot shielded for a time. Justice Omotosho delivered the sentence as agreed. Nnamdi Kanu was led away to begin serving life imprisonment. The government achieved its goal. But the ICPC investigation stripped away the cover. Documents, transfers, ledgers, and insider evidence proved beyond doubt that the conviction and life sentence were bought and paid for. No amount of formal courtroom language could erase the fact that the trial was rigged with billions. The life sentence delivered on November 20, 2025, stands as a paid-for outcome. It was not rooted in pure law. It was rooted in the 50 billion naira that flowed to the 5 senior advocates of Nigeria and Justice James Omotosho to jail Nnamdi Kanu unlawfully. The ICPC files documented it all. The payments. The plot. The delivery. Nnamdi Kanu remains behind bars.